Ship-to-ship weapons in the Stargate franchise vary widely depending on the technology level of each civilization, ranging from kinetic weapons to directed energy waves. Here, space battles often depended not on just shielding technology but also whether a weapon was powerful enough or was designed for specific roles, or how they can bypass space defenses. So here in this video we will explore the 12 most powerful ship-to-ship weapons of Stargate. Let's get banging! At the bottom we have the Replicator Disruptor Cannon. So this one is highly specific as it only fights the Replicators. This was a huge ship-to-ship weapon installed on certain Asgardian ships to fight the Replicators. It is basically a giant version of the handheld anti-replicator gun. Instead of shooting normally, the Disruptor Cannon fires a special energy wave tuned exactly to the frequency of the Replicators' internal chiron pathways, which are the connections holding all their pieces together. When the wave hits them, it scrambles and severs those connections at a molecular level, causing these replicators to instantly fall apart into useless debris. However, its biggest weakness was that replicators could evolve and adapt to the weapon, and also that it was basically useless against other ships of other races. Above this, at number 11 are the Railguns. The Tau'ri Railguns were powerful electromagnetic guns used by Earth's military on ships like the BC-304 Daedalus class and the Prometheus. These work by running huge amounts of electricity through magnetic rails inside the weapon, creating a powerful electromagnetic field that launches solid metal slugs at Mach 5 or more. The basic schematic was fairly simple but still very advanced. Magnetic forces pushing the slug forward at hypersonic speed and targeting computers guides rapid-fire bursts towards enemy ships or fighters. These guns could fire about 500 rounds per minute, and that makes them excellent for continuous defensive fire. They were specifically effective against fast-moving enemies like the Wraith Darts, the Death Gliders, and unshielded ships like those of the Wraith and the Replicators, but these weapons were completely ineffective against shielded targets. Number 10. Nuclear Missiles. So nukes were the Tau'ri's deadliest weapons. These nukes range from standard ones to massive Naquadah-enhanced warheads like the Mark 8 missiles carried aboard the BC-304 Daedalus class. Their basic design worked like real nuclear weapons by using the science of fission or fusion, but with added Naquadah, which is an alien superconductor material that massively amplifies the blast yield into the gigaton range. One of the earliest and most famous uses happened when Jack O'Neill sent a nuclear bomb aboard Ra's mothership, destroying it in orbit above armadas. Then later, Tau'ri ships used transporters to beam nukes directly inside Wraith hive ships. Here, the explosions bypassed armor and the shieldings and tore the vessels apart from within. However, nukes had major weaknesses. Advanced shielding used by spaceships of every race could completely absorb or ignore the blasts. At number 9 we have the Staff Cannon. So staff cannons were heavy energy weapons used by the Goa'uld. They were oversized versions of the standard Goa'uld Staff weapons, designed to fire concentrated plasma-like energy blasts at targets. These cannons were normally mounted on Goa'uld ships like the Hattaks, the Alkesh bombers and the Death Gliders, where they serve as the primary offensive weapons during ship-to-ship battles. The schematic behind how they work was similar to a normal staff weapon. Liquid Naquadah-based power systems and Goa'uld crystal technology generate and focus high-energy plasma discharges, which were then accelerated and fired through a staff as glowing bolts of energy. Staff cannons were very effective against unshielded targets, but they became much less useful against highly advanced enemies because stronger shield technologies from races like the Asgard and the Ori could absorb the attacks almost completely. Number 8. The Lantean and Destiny's Pulse Cannons. The Destiny ship had pulse cannons, which were ancient energy weapons created by the ancients millions of years ago. Mounted all across the hull on the starship, these weapons included dozens of smaller double and triple barrel turrets for anti-fighter defense, as well as a massive 4-barrel main cannon underneath the ship for attacking larger enemy vessels. The way how the weapon works involves ancient energy reactors channeling power through crystal-based conduits into pulse emitters that compress and discharge packets of high-energy plasma or particle energy as bright yellow bolts. Later versions of similar pulse weapons used by the Assyrians and the Ancients on Aurora-class ships were much stronger and could destroy shielded ships and damage even the Wraith Hive ships, even though these struggled against the highly advanced Asgard shields. Number 7. The Asgard Ion Guns. So ion guns were the main ship weapons used by the Asgard fleet before they later developed the even stronger Plasma Beam Weapons. They were mounted on ships like the Bulskirna class and even the O'Neill class warships. The ion guns fired concentrated streams or bolts of energized particles that could smash through enemy hulls and overload shields with incredible force. The basic schematic behind the weapon involves Asgard reactors generating enormous amounts of energy, which were then focused through advanced crystal and particle accelerating systems into tightly controlled ionized blasts before being discharged from emitter arrays on the ship. These weapons could destroy multiple Goa'uld attacks with ease. They also worked well against replicator vessels. However, later Anubis' upgraded Goa'uld ships with advanced ancient shielding was able to survive ion cannon attacks, and then the Ori ships with their advanced shielding made these weapons near useless. On the 6th spot we have the Wraith Energy Weapon. So Wraith Energy weapons in the Stargate Atlantis universe were organic-looking plasma-based weaponry used by these vampiric wraiths on their darts, cruisers and massive hive ships. Unlike the smooth beam weapons used by the Asgard or the Ori, Wraith weapons fight rapid bursts of glowing energy pulses that slams into targets over and over again, almost like a machine gun made of plasma. The way how this works was very different from most other races because Wraith technology was partly biological, as living ship systems generates and channel energy through organic conduits grown into the hull itself, then focusing the energy into firing nodes that launches destructive plasma bursts. Hive ships mounted large and powerful batteries that could pound away an enemy shield continuously during long battles. These weapons were so powerful that even the Asgard shields on a Daedalus class could eventually be worn out or worn down in 20 minutes. On the 5th spot we have the Ori Pulse weapon. So these were powerful secondary energy cannons mounted all across the giant warships of the Ori. How these weapons worked was very similar to the Lantean Pulse Cannons, but they were probably much more powerful. In battle, these pulse weapons were incredibly destructive against most ships in the galaxy. During the Battle of P3Y229, they easily blasted apart the upgraded Goa'uld attacks, draining away their shields in only a few shots before completely destroying the ships moments later. Compared to staff cannons, they were vastly more advanced, and however, despite their strength, the pulse weapons were not unstoppable. Advanced Asgard shields used on the Daedalus class battlecruisers and the O'Neill class Asgard ships could withstand the attacks much more effectively, but they could still deplete the shields of the Anubis upgraded mothership with just 12 hits, which means they were far more powerful than what was said on paper. Number 4. The Wraith ZPM Energy Weapon. See, the most terrifying version of the Wraith Hive Ship Energy Cannon appeared when a Hive ship captured an ancient relic known as the ZPM, the zero-point module, and this Hive ship was able to get power from it, which in turn massively boosted the energy of the ship and thus allowed it to grow itself and in turn generate many gigantic super cannons. These enhanced blasts were powerful enough to crush Asgard shields in only a few hits, and could even weaken the shields of the ancient city ship Atlantis itself, which was something considered almost impossible in the Stargate universe. This was the Super Hive ship, and thus the weapons were still Wraith energy cannons, but more likely a more evolved version powered by the zero-point module. On the 3rd spot we have the Lantean and the Ori Beam Cannon. So the central beam weapon of an Ori warship, and presumably a Lantean ship, was one of the most terrifying and most powerful ship weapons ever seen in Stargate. They were mounted in a huge dish-like structure at the front of the ship, at least for the Ori. The weapon fires an enormous fiery energy beam which is capable of slicing straight through enemy shielding and through the hulls in a single hit. Unlike the rapid-fire pulse weapons, this cannon needed a few seconds to recharge between shots because each blast releases such an immense amount of energy. In combat, the weapon was devastating. A single beam attack could completely destroy a Goa'uld attack with extra energy to spare. Entire fleets of attacks were nearly helpless against even one of the Ori warships because the beam weapon was simply too strong for their shields or weapons to handle. Advanced Asgard shields on the Daedalus class could survive several hits, but repeatedly would overload the shields and eventually destroy the vessel. On the second spot we have the Asgard Plasma Beam Weapon. These were incredibly advanced ship-mounted weapons created by the Asgard shortly before their extinction, and they were gifted to the Tau'ri, the humans of Earth, as part of the Asgard legacy. Unlike most space weapons that fired separate bolts or pulses of energy, these cannons emitted tightly focused continuous beams of superheated plasma. The schematic behind how they worked involves massive Asgard power cores feeding energy into highly advanced plasma generation chambers where matter was heated into an ultra-energetic plasma state and then focused through beam emitters, probably using magnetic containment fields. These weapons were amongst the strongest ever seen in Stargate because they could penetrate even the mighty Ori warship shields in just 5 strikes. The beams were also devastating against Wraith Hive ships and the Asuran Aurora-class battleships, often destroying them in just a few shots if critical systems were struck. And number 1, the ancient drone weapons. So drone weapons were the primary ship-to-ship weapons of the ancient city ships and were amongst the deadliest space weapons ever created in Stargate. These drones were intelligent. They were squid-shaped energy projectiles that can penetrate the best of shields that were available. Stored in huge launch chambers throughout a city ship, thousands of drones could be fired all at once through a control chair operated by someone with the ancient gene, which included some humans. They are powered by a zero-point module and guided by a neural interface system, which allows the drones to receive targeting data directly from the pilot's mind. Once launched, the drones accelerated at incredible speed, surrounding themselves with an energy field, and uses advanced sensors to dodge enemy fire and even bypass shields almost like they were not even there, and then automatically aim for the most vulnerable parts of the enemy ship. In large battles, Atlantis could unleash massive swarms of drones that can overwhelm fleets of attacks or Wraith Hive ships in seconds. These city ships carried tens of thousands of these weapons, enough to wipe out entire armadas and the most powerful of ships of any race. And so with that we come to the end of the video on the most powerful ship-to-ship weapons of Stargate. So do hit the like button for support and also click that bell button for regular updates on new video uploads. Also subscribe to be a part of Legion Nutbug. And so till the next time, take care boys.